So, a few weeks ago I started working on an etude from Chaffee's sticking patterns. The book is well known among drummers, mostly for the sticking system, which Gary invented for a number of purposes, such as being more fluid behind the kit and have more natural accent possibilities. Study 6 that I played in the beginning of this video is from the section 2 of the book, which deals with sticking applications in polyrhythms. I'm gonna try to show the structure of Study 6, and based on that demonstrate the depth of Gary Chaffee's works. Just like the rest of the etudes in the book, Study 6 was originally written for a snare drum. And performing on a snare drum only is not an easy task by itself, since the rhythms are challenging and you should also play with dynamics. Here is my take on the snare-only version in 80 BPM. But after we play the study as written, it should be orchestrated on the drum set. There are several strategies for getting comfortable behind the set, which Gary mentions in another book called Rhythm Meter Patterns. To explain my way of orchestrating Study 6, I will now go bar by bar and highlight certain motifs and themes which I discovered while analyzing the piece. We begin at bar 1. The first two groups of notes already look similar and even have the same number of notes. The difference is in the first 3 notes of each group, and it should be audible in the performance. Next we have 2 8-note quintuplets with nested triplets inside. Notice that the notes are arranged in a specific order: triplet, triplet, 8-note, triplet, triplet, 8-note, triplet, triplet, 8-note, triplet. It looks as if we have 3 equal groups inside the quintuplets, plus the beginning of one more group. This structure goes over the bar line and creates a nice polyrhythmic effect. After that, we have 2 equal combinations of 16th notes and rests. I mark them red. Then we skip 1/4 note, I will explain it later, and see another big quintuplet, this time with both 16th notes and a triplet inside. It looks similar to me to the beginning of the piece, almost like the first 2 figures are melted together. That's why it's gonna be blue. Then there is a lonely 8th note, and I dare to highlight it the same color as the lonely 1/4 note before the big quintuplet. Why? Well, these 2 notes look symmetrical in respect to the quintuplet. Even their distance from the quintuplet is the same. Okay, then we have a bunch of notes which form a 5/16 polymeter and moreover remind us of the previous red notes. Then there is a big quintuplet with nested triplets over the bar line. Although it's similar to a figure that we will encounter later, I prefer just to leave it as it is, to be closer in sound to the previous cymbal part. At the end of the bar, we have some sort of a 4/3 polyrhythm. Let's paint it yellow and leave it like that for a while. Bar 7 has 2 big quintuplets, identical in structure. Bar 8 is a bit trickier. The notes are organized in groups 3-3-2-2, then again 3-3-2-2, and then 3-3. Something similar to what we saw in the first line of the piece, a nice polyrhythmic effect. There is a great amount of similar figures in lines 2 and 3. If you look closely, they all consist of 2 notes with the rest inside. The difference in values creates a speeding up or slowing down effect. And also we have 4 identical groups of 16th notes. Then, at the end of the third line, there is a 4/3 polyrhythm, which brings us back to the previous page. Now, here is an illustration of how these figures correspond to each other. It's easy to see that bars 13 and 14 are similar. Let's look closer to bar 13. If we change the way it's written, we'll notice that 30-second notes and rests are organized in groups of 6, creating a polyrhythm by itself. Let's do the same thing with bar 14. After rearranging the notes, we see the same groups of 6, although they will move at a slower speed. So 2 bars together create a slowing down effect, which works particularly nice with the intended diminuendo. Finally, at the end of the piece we have 3 big quintuplets. The notes inside form a 3-3-2 pattern, which repeats 5 times. Notice that because of the crescendo in the last line, the end of the piece leads to the beginning with its fortissimo. Now let's hear the entire study 6 one more time with the highlighted notes. In my orchestration, I tried to reflect all the similar motifs found in the piece. The corresponding parts are played more or less on the same parts of the drum set. For example, a 3-note combination that we saw in the bars 13 and 14 is played on a snare drum, high tom, and low tom, with hi-hat splash sound supporting the beginning of each combination. And of course, any other combination can be used if it's reflecting the piece and has a musical value to it, which is the main idea of the whole process. I need to mention though that performing dynamics accurately becomes way harder, and my performance is not perfect in that regard. Also, some of the choices may seem odd or maybe irrelevant, and that's fine because the process is very individual. As you can see, Gary Chaffee was very deliberate in creating the studies. Instead of making them complex for the sake of complexity, he emphasized the aesthetic component. And this gives us the opportunity to work with the studies in the same manner as we would work with any major piece. Finally, I would like to mention Berkeley professor Henrique De Almeida, who studied with Gary Chaffee and in fact is one of the so-called patterns masters, people who are certified by Gary himself to teach his materials. It is because of my lessons with Henrique that I started to analyze Gary's studies and spend more time applying them to the drum set instead of only playing them on the snare drum. Henrique wrote his own book called Polyrhythmic Possibilities, full of beautiful and challenging pieces, both for the snare drum and the drum set. Also, there are several links in the description that might be helpful while studying this material.